Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of My True Crime Obsession, episode number 3. And glad to see everybody. Thank you to all my fans and followers who are tuning in. I really appreciate it. And today in the studio, I have two special guests with me. First guest is Nick Greystone. You may know him. He was on my last episode for the podcast. And Nick is a fellow podcaster. He does Primal Scream, his own podcast, and we share an interest in true crime. So with today's topic that I'm going to be talking about and speaking about in a couple of minutes, I definitely wanted Nick in the studio today to talk about because it's quite a hot topic. Also here with me today is a friend, a longtime friend and fan of my Facebook page, My True Crime Obsession, Michael Levitt. So welcome.
Hi, everybody.
And before I get started in what we're talking about today, just wanted to do a couple of shout outs. So, last week I actually went to the Paramount to go see Michael Carbonaro perform. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he's a childhood friend of mine. We both grew up in Oakdale together and very close friends with his family. And it was a great show. And I want to give a shout out to his mom, Liz, because she has always been a great supporter of My True Crime Obsession. Thank you, Liz. And it was great. I got a chance to go with Michael, actually, and we met Michael Carbonaro backstage. So it was definitely a lot of fun. And another shout out I'd like to give is to Long Island Crime Expo. My friend Gina Leone runs the Long Island Crime Expo. And one of my other friends, Cheryl McCullum, does a podcast. It's called Zone 7. It's great. You can find it on Spotify or any of the Apple podcasts. And she also has a Facebook page, Zone 7, which is great. So shout out to Cheryl McCullum. So, Nick, do you have anybody you want to speak to? Or?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks. Thanks for the awesome introduction.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
Yep.
Just a shout out to the band, Demon Scar. That's my band. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We just dropped our new single today. Actually, that is inspired by a true crime event.
Oh.
It's called The Coldest Hell, and I got inspired after I stayed in room 507 at the Ambassador Hotel. That was the room where Jeffrey Dahmer killed Stephen Toomey.
Oh,
that was
wow.
his second victim. And, this is the Primal Stream podcast. So you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter and Spotify and all that fun stuff. And my last shout-out is to James Burke. Thank you for your service this week, sir, because we have a lot to talk about because of you.
Oh, yeah.
Naughty.
Michael, you got anybody you want to shout out to? Any?
So first, I want to thank you for letting me
absolutely.
sit in as moral support. and I'm presuming, Nick, that based upon everything I've known about you over the last couple of weeks, that your band is somewhat of like on the classical music end.
Oh, yeah, we're easy listening. Demon
Easy
Scar.
listening. So I'm gonna have to check it out because I think I might be very much into your style of music. No joke. But I do want to give a shout out to an organization that Christine and I are both members of. It's No Limit New York. You can find them on Facebook. No Limit New York, No Limit Nationwide, as well as the webpage NPPT Poker, No Limit Pub Poker Tour. We are a free poker game where we play in the bars. 5 different bars a week, 5 different bars a day, 6 days a week. It's free to play, and you can win your seat to go play in a major tournament in Vegas with a grand prize of $100,000. We had somebody finish second place just this past Vegas trip for $50,000.
Yeah.
So if you're into poker, it's a great place to play. If you want to learn to play poker, we have all different levels of people playing. We are a learning league, so we will teach you to play the game.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it. And,
I don't know shit about poker. I would love to learn.
And come play.
Perfect
Yeah.
opportunity
play.
for you to learn that I didn't know anything, and I still don't know anything.
I mean, 50 grand, shit, I'll learn anything.
But I'm a little bit better than when I started, so
So
I'll
cool.
just say that.
She's getting better because when she would lose, she'd just walk away, not understand how or why. And now when she loses to somebody who played donkey, she gets very upset.
Yes.
So that's how how you know she's getting better because she gets upset by the losses.
There you go.
But you should come play. Come play at Changing Times Tuesday night on Larkfield Road in East Northport. That's where Christine plays.
Yeah.
That's where I deal.
Yeah,
And
it's great.
We'll get
It's
you a seat. We'll get you a seat. You'll come play, meet a lot of good people, have some good food, and learn to play the game.
Yeah, and it's very social, and you get to meet a lot of great people, like Michael said. I mean, it's just a very social, fun atmosphere, and you get to learn to play the game of Texas Hold'em, and you're not spending any money on it. It's all free. So yeah,
When we have our big events, which we have one coming up, we'll have over 100 people playing in the event.
yeah, it's
So
great.
when we have
It's
the,
great.
the big events once a month, and then we do an end of the season event, we have over 100 people playing.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
great. So I guess this is a true crime podcast, so let's get to true crime.
Get it.
So yeah, let's get into it. But I'm gonna do a disclosure first. I'm just gonna warn anybody who's watching right now, anyone who's listening. It is adult content, especially today's episode, because there's a lot to discuss, and there's no easy way around discussing certain things that transpired. So
Would that be the blowjob that was offered to the cop to get off from Mr. Burke?
well, you know what? I'm going to start by saying just when you think that true crime in Suffolk County can't get any crazier in the last couple of months, apparently I was wrong. Okay, It can get crazy because last Tuesday, last Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, we had another news story in true crime, and it's related a lot to what's going on recently in Long Island with true crime. And there's one name that just seems to keep popping up over and over and over again and just never goes away.
Popping up, no pun intended.
Yeah. For those of you that live on Long Island, or those of you that have closely followed the Long Island Gilgo Beach Lisk serial killer case, you probably know who I'm already speaking of, okay? And yes, that's right. I'm talking about the one and only, none other than James Burke. That name just keeps coming up. And if that name doesn't ring a bell for any of you out there watching, listening, because maybe you're not from this geographic area, allow us to fill you in today, because you're going to find out all about James Burke. He is our disgraced former Suffolk County Chief of Police. And,
Scumbag.
and yeah, some people have some.
Why do you need
some
to insult scumbags?
Right? You're right, exactly.
It seems that trouble always seems to find James Burke, or, well, maybe it's the other way around.
He just
but-
likes finding.
Either way, this clown, and I'm using a very mild term for him, always seems to
Insulting
find
to
to put
clowns.
himself in the spotlight. And so today we are going to make him part of the spotlight. I'm sure he's probably gloating right now if he's listening. Highly unlikely, but James Burke, it's all about you today. And one of the things that I do want to talk about is this book, Jimmy the King. It's excellent. It came out last year. Gus Garcia Roberts. I'm actually friends with him on Facebook, and I'm happy to promote his book because if you know nothing about Long Island, if you know nothing about Suffolk County Police Force, there is a history of corruption on Long Island, and a lot of that stems from our main character, James Burke. So, yeah, let's get into it. So he was arrested last Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, and he was charged with 4 things. First of all, he solicited a male undercover ranger for sex, and that took place at Vietnam Veterans Memorial Park in Farmingville, New York. And the 4 things that he was charged with was offering a sex act, criminal solicitation, indecent exposure, and public lewdness. Since that incident happened, 2 of the charges have been dropped. Offering a sex act and criminal solicitation, but he still has the charges of indecent exposure and public lewdness still looming.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Literally.
that's probably because he didn't say for $20. I like sucking dick.
Oh,
right.
my goodness.
He just liked to suck dick.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, boy,
You know,
oh,
when
boy.
you're offering it for free, it's not
There you go.
soliciting.
So wait, the sex worker was a male.
So, yeah, let's get into it. So, basically, he was there in the park early in the morning. He was arrested at 10:15 a.m. last Tuesday, August 22nd. And he pulled down his pants. He displayed his penis. He manipulated his penis in a sexual manner in a public place and stated, "I like to suck,"
Wee.
to the witness, who was undercover officer James S. Summer. Yes, so it was a man of male identity, and yes, so he was very explicit in what he wanted and how he wanted it. So, and yes, so he was arrested last Tuesday. And yes, James Burke is back in
So
the
I just
media
want to
again. Yes.
make clear, he wasn't looking for this guy to service him. He was looking to pay this guy so he could service him.
I think
That's like some
so.
basketball diary shit.
Yeah.
Jesus.
My goodness. So,
Jimmy,
yes,
like, what
yes.
the fuck is going on
I
here?
can't even wrap my head around it. And so, you
Or
know.
wrap his penis around.
There you go. Oh my God. I warned you, everyone. I warned you. Okay. So, yeah, you know, but I'd like to take a walk back in time and just talk about James Burke and his rise to, you know, power in Suffolk County, working as a law enforcement officer. His roots go all the way back. He was actually, if I give a little bit of history of James Burke, okay, he was born on October 6th, 1964. He was born in actually Peninsula General Hospital in Far Rockaway, Queens. He grew up there. He has a younger brother, and his parents split around 1966, 67. And he spent his younger years growing up in Queens, but then his mother remarried in 1978. And they moved out to Smithtown. So he grew up right here on Long Island for most of his young life. He grew up in Smithtown. He has history with his family in law enforcement. His great grandfather worked for the NYPD. His father George worked for the NYPD.
Were they on the up and up?
I don't think so. No, not as far as I know. Not from the research I've done. But James Burke, you know. When he was 14 years old, the year was 1979, that's when he first had his first foray into, let's say, true crime. It's
an interesting way to put it.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So those of you not from Long Island who don't know the history of Long Island crimes, on Friday, April 20th, 1979, that is the date in which the death of John Pius, the John Pius murder, took place. John Pius was a 13-year-old boy, and he also lived in Smithtown. He lived on Franklin Drive in Smithtown, and he was killed behind Dogwood Elementary School in Smithtown. And the reason why he was killed by 4 teenage boys, and I'll get into that in a minute, but their names and the history and everything. But he was killed because he witnessed them stealing a $5, a $5 mini bike. And so the 4 teenagers who were older than them, they ranged in age from 16 to, I believe, 17, 18 years old, thought that he was going to snitch to the police, and so they shoved rocks down his throat and killed him. So the people those 4 boys were Peter Quartararo, and I apologize if I mispronounce that name, his younger brother Michael Quartararo, Thomas Ryan, and Robert Brenzick. So all 4 boys were tried over the years for their participation in the murder. But basically what happened was there was corruption there from the get-go. The investigators, the Suffolk County Police that investigated this crime, coerced a confession from Peter Quartararo. And that has always been a sore subject because a lot of these boys were convicted on a false confession or a coerced confession.
They scared it out of him?
They kind of scared it out of him. But, I mean, you know, when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, when you do any kind of research into this murder, those 4 boys were responsible for his death.
Yeah.
Whether, you know, they aided in the murder or whether they actually participated directly in that murder. So, but how does James Burke play into all this? Well, his testimony was crucial in convicting these 4 boys. And he did not witness the murder, but he was over by the St. James Railroad Station, and he overheard boys and people in the neighborhood talking. And because of what he heard, it was based on his testimony of what he heard that he went to court and he testified. There was a young prosecutor at the time working in Suffolk County for the Assistant District Attorney's Office.
Can I guess his name?
Hold on, we'll get to it. And he was very eager, as Michael is, to tell you his name, to make it in Suffolk County politics and Suffolk County court system and Suffolk County Police Department. And Yeah, if you're not sure what his name is, go ahead, Michael.
I think it might have been Mr. Spoda.
Thomas Spoda, correct. So
And the stars aligned.
Yes, that's right. Actually, the stars did align because if you take a look at it, that's when James Burke and Thomas Spoda first came together and they formed a powerhouse team. Thomas Spoda said to James Burke, basically, essentially, you know what, if you testify in court and help me get a conviction against these 4 boys, I'll take you under my wing. If you want to become a Suffolk County cop, he's like, I'll make sure that you move up the ranks.
How old was Burke at this time?
14 years old. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the murder happened in April 20th, 1979. He was born in 64, so he hadn't yet turned 15 years old. He was
So when,
just, yeah.
so when he first met Spoda and he first testified, he was only 14?
Well, he testified
this.
a couple years later, yes, but at that point he was probably 15, 16, 17 years old, yeah. But when he overheard conversations going on in St. James and Smithtown area about, you know, who was responsible for these murders because kids started talking, you know, he went to the police and they, or maybe the police actually approached him and said, come on, go ahead and testify in court. But there was a lot, the way that this case was investigated from the get-go was just completely... They fouled it up. I mean, there was testimony that John Pius's mother had given about what transpired that night and the events that led up to his disappearance and eventual murder, and that was never even presented in court. So why wasn't it presented in court, you know? And, you know, there were just other things that just... So this case just basically never went away, but the person who walked away a star from this case was obviously Thomas Spoda and James Burke. And James Burke used to hang out with Thomas Spoda over in the district attorney's office from a young age. He also hung out in the 4th precinct, you know, and mind you, he was only a teenager at the time. But,
It's kind of like Henry Hill,
yeah, yeah, right?
you know, just
Exactly.
like a cop version of it.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, you know, he wasn't very good in school. I mean, he made, you know, basic grades or whatever. And his stepfather, I believe, was an electrician, or he was in air conditioning repair and all that stuff. And so I guess, you know, as far as his aspirations went with regards to James Burke, like, you know, whether he wanted to become a cop or not, he knew he didn't really have the grades for it. Which, you know...
You need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even at that time, back in the late 70s, early 80s, you know, he graduated from Smithtown High School class in 1982. But, you know, he wasn't a star student. But you know what? He was charming. Teachers liked him. He had the gift of gab. He could win people over and influence people, which obviously...
It's like he
we've
did.
seen. Yeah. But, you know, he pretty much committed himself that he was going to work for his stepfather in that business, you know. But
So
he got-
even then he was good with his tongue.
yeah, well, which leads to his first arrest. So after he graduated high school, it was Friday, August 6th, 1982, and he went down to Captree with a bunch of friends, and I guess they were there to go fishing or whatever the case may be, but they wound up being a drinking fest. Gets in his car, goes to go home in Smithtown, goes on the Ocean Parkway, but instead of going home to Smithtown, he started heading west to, headed west to Nassau County, realized he went the wrong way because he was drunk, and then he sees the cop car lights, and he gets pulled over, and they give him a breathalyzer, and sure enough, he, tested positive or, over the legal limit, for alcohol. So he got arrested for drunk driving, so he had that on his record.
So even that they
Yeah.
overlooked.
Well, they didn't overlook it. Remember, he was friends with Thomas Spoda.
Yeah, so right.
So he was supposed to show up for court, for his court date, and he wound up blowing that off. So, and through his connections with Spoda, no pun intended, sorry.
So that's how he got out of that one, too. No, James, you're
Common
blowing
theme.
into the wrong thing. We're doing a breathalyzer here, not a cockalizer.
But needless to
James,
say,
get off your knees. Get off. You don't need to be on your knees for the breathalyzer, James.
I can't. I apologize, but all right, you guys have fun. So he pleaded down the case to non-criminal violation. So when it came time to, he wanted to join the police force like his dad, like his grandfather, he did wind up going into the NYPD. That's where he started in January of 1985.
That's like a slap in the face of like the guys who actually did the job
Yeah.
like the right way and like went through the ranks to get to their position. Well, you have like,
Yeah.
the golden child just walking in.
Oh, yeah. And I like that term that you use, golden child, because that seemed to really follow him throughout his whole career. I mean, this guy was like untouchable, and it just, I was going to say it blows my mind, but I know that that's going to lead to
We're
another
going
joke.
back there.
Yes, I can't help it, sorry. But, that he just was able to do what he was able to do and get away with what he was able to get away with, while other hardworking cops, had to go up the ranks and kind of work hard to get to where they were. And it really, it just sets a bad precedent.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere, though. Like, I feel like any type of job, if you have someone that's up in the higher of the ranks and they want you're the man.
Oh, yeah.
They're not going to, they'll look upon the one that's more, less qualified, like that person, and bring that person up instead of the more qualified one.
Yeah. Oh, well, we haven't even gotten to the really colorful stuff yet, so.
There's more?
Oh, absolutely. We got plenty. So 1986, he winds up, through his connections, getting on to the Suffolk County Police Department. So, and he was assigned to, I believe it was I might have the precinct wrong, but he was assigned, his first assignment was to the West Babylon, Amityville area, Wyandanch area, and I believe that's the first precinct or the third precinct. I'm not sure. I'd have to take a look at a map and see, but I think it was the third precinct.
Yeah, I think
So-
first is what the a little bit down further. By,
Yeah. So,
Plainview,
but that's where the action was, and that's where he wanted to be. And his nefarious ways started there, right there in Wyandanch and that area, Amityville, North Amityville. So he wound up getting involved while he was a police officer in uniform with a prostitute, and her name was Loretta Rickenbacker. Okay, and that's, if you look at James Burke, that name seems to come up a lot. But she was a woman who was involved in prostitution. She was a drug addict. She was a drug dealer, and she engaged with James Burke in sex acts in the police car while he was on duty. Okay,
That's wrong?
well, I don't know. I mean, is that wrong? Should I have not done that? I don't know.
What year was this?
This is around the early 90s, I would say. Probably late 80s, early 90s. He's on the job less than 10 years. And, so he's engaging with her, and she was his unofficial girlfriend, and they did drugs together. They'd go to hotels together in that area, have sex, but they'd also have sex in the police car. And he actually misplaced his service weapon. She had it. And so he when you look at him, he's just a total screw up. So,
Well, at least she didn't get beat up for taking his gun.
Right.
but it did lead to Suffolk County Internal Affairs Bureau opening up a file on James Burke. Okay, and that happened in 1995. So, because I guess the county, the police force, kind of refrains from police officers having sex in police cars while
Yeah,
on
they're
duty,
probably-
especially with prostitutes. I mean, really. So.
It's not something
yeah.
that's going to make you chief of police.
Or maybe it is.
Who
Maybe
knows?
it is.
All right. But yeah, so yeah, so there you go. But somehow, that was kind of brushed under the carpet like everything else, and he moved up the ranks and became a police detective and became a sergeant, I believe a lieutenant, and then in 2012, he was promoted to Suffolk County Chief of Police in January 2012. And he was appointed by none other than Suffolk County Executive at the time, Steve Ballone. So, which leads to his second arrest, which everyone who's ever done any research on James Burke is probably most familiar with. And this happened in December 14th, 2012. I mean, he was promoted to Suffolk County Police Chief in January, and this is not even a year later. So, December 14th, 2012, Christopher Loeb enters the picture. If you're familiar with Christopher Loeb, any of you are familiar with Christopher Loeb?
Yes.
He was a heroin addict, and by sheer stupidity, or he just was around in the Smithtown area, and he was in James Burke's neighborhood. James Burke grew up, or actually, he at that point in time he lived on Samish Street, and I'm not giving away any information that's private. I mean, it's all public knowledge that he lived on Samish Street. So he had his police vehicle, or actually his regular car, was parked in the driveway, and he didn't lock his car, and he had his police duffel bag in there. So, and Christopher Loeb, who was a heroin addict and looking to just kind of get whatever he could get out of cars.
Said he was going after like the street drugs because that's who got the tip
absolutely.
off him.
So yeah.
But how irresponsible do you have to be? You're that high up in the police force, you got weapons in your car, and you leave it unlocked?
Well, that's because
Because he just didn't.
Because he's Jimmy Burke.
He's Jimmy Burke, exactly. He didn't. Who's going to steal from the chief of police?
Jimmy the King.
So exactly, Jimmy the King. Yes, absolutely. I mean, the guy was a total narcissist. But anyway,
Absolutely.
so Christopher Loeb steals his duffel bag. You ready to hear about what was in the duffel bag?
I can
All
only
right,
imagine.
Let's do a drum roll. So we'll start with the normal stuff, and then we'll get into what else was in the duffel bag. So we had his gun belt in there. He had ammunition in there. He had a box of cigars in there. So he had prescription bottles for Viagra, bunch of dildos.
Nice.
Okay. And he had a pornographic video in his duffel bag. Want to know what the title was?
Guy on Guy 3.
I'm just here for the gangbang. Part 2.
Part 2.
Yes.
And all I got was this mug.
So, yeah.
I'm interested in how successful Part 1 was that they made a sequel.
Oh, I'm sure. It was so successful that they made 8 more after that.
So now, James Burke, reports it, obviously. He goes down to his station house, he gathers up his posse, okay, and they start, searching the neighborhood and everything else, and they do wind up, if they wind up finding out it was Christopher Loeb, obviously, that stole the duffel bag.
The same night, right?
Yes, the same night. So they go to his house, Christopher Loeb's house. He was on Landing Avenue in Smithtown at the time, living with his mother. And they enter his house. And now here's a little twist, okay? So James Burke is the victim in this case. He is the one that he is considered the theft victim, okay? Christopher Loeb is the suspect. So the theft victim actually enters the suspect's house, which is totally illegal. But anyway, they wind up finding the duffel bag, and there were certain things in the duffel bag that James Burke wanted. Honestly, he wanted his cigars because they were very nice cigars.
Probably wanted the video.
No, actually, believe it or not, he left the pornographic video for Christopher Loeb on his nightstand. Apparently, he didn't want that. But he wanted his Viagra, he wanted his cigars, I guess he wanted his dildos. So they take the duffel bag back to police headquarters. But they did, before he was about to grab the bag, the cops that were there in the house doing the investigation says, we have to take a picture of this, But of course, they cleaned up the picture and only showed, certain things that were in the bag that weren't that incriminating. So now they're in.
But I'm having an issue with
Right.
what you just said.
Yeah.
He wanted his dildos. Just a picture.
Yeah.
He had some type of attachment to it.
Oh my God. I'm
I
telling
really
you.
would love to see like his service holster, like what it really looked like, that holster, the strap-on
Yeah.
part and stuff.
I mean, honestly, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
This is the stuff of Hollywood movies, really.
Well,
Totally.
No, you could,
And they're called pornographs.
you could make it up, but
Pornographies.
nobody would believe you.
Right.
Yes. To all you listeners out there, especially those of you from Suffolk County, this is your tax dollars at work. Yeah, this is James Burke. But anyway, getting back to it. So now Christopher Loeb is brought into the precinct. He is questioned by, some of the arresting officers, and he's just basically not talking. He's like, I want my lawyer, I want my lawyer. Finally, James Burke goes in there, and some of the officers that were in there questioning him kind of roughed him up a bit, okay? But James Burke went in there for the finale, So basically, Christopher Loeb was there. He was in handcuffs. He couldn't really move. He was in the seat, and just basically Christopher Loeb spat at him, insults. He called him pervert, pedophile. He's like, I've seen what's in your duffel bag. Called him a pee-pee toucher, So that was an interesting term for him. So, and just, basically.
Wasn't too far off.
No, he wasn't, And I can't substantiate this. I know that there was a pornographic tape in there, and I already mentioned the tape, but there are rumors that there was
snuff
possible
flick,
child.
right?
Yeah, that
They were what?
and
Snuff.
snuff
Really?
film, possible snuff film. That can't be substantiated. Please don't take that as fact. These are just rumors. And
It's
the other
not too
thing was
far-fetched, though.
and child pornography, possibly. So yeah, because Christopher Loeb's like, you're a pee-pee toucher. So
Why would he say that?
exactly. The other thing is, where was I going with this? So, so he basically beat him to a bloody pulp, and he's the chief of police. I guess he can do that, So, but that was his downfall. I mean, not all this other stuff. This
No.
was the one that he wasn't going to be able to escape.
No.
So, yeah. And anyway, but so basically, he resigned from Suffolk County Police Department because he knew he was going to be charged with this. There was no way getting around it. And I think he resigned in 2015. He was arrested and arraigned on December 9th, 2015, and then he pled guilty on February 26th, 2016.
Did he get to keep his dildos? That's the most important question.
Interesting. I do not know. That's a good question. James, if you're listening, you want to call in? Let us know. He served 40 months in prison, and he was released in April 2019 on parole. So
That's,
4 years later, he was arrested again.
So what's crazy about that is
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to talk about it
Yeah.
or not, but the two dudes, Spoda and McPartland,
Oh, yes.
are still in prison.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
So Thomas Spoda, I have notes on this. Thomas Spoda and McPartland. Thomas Spoda, for those of you that don't know, is the disgraced former Suffolk County District Attorney. Christopher McParland worked under him. Christopher McParland was Thomas Spoda's right-hand man. He was...
I know you're about to say.
Burke worked on top of him sometimes, below, wherever they go.
So Christopher McParland worked for Spoda's Anti-Corruption Bureau. Talk about irony, okay? Anti-corruption is the term he was given, but meanwhile, they were both corrupt. So they were charged on October 25th, 2017. They were convicted on December 17th, 2019, and they each received a 5-year prison sentence. Would you like to know what they were convicted on?
That's
All
gonna be my
right, here we
question.
go. So they were convicted on witness tampering, obstruction of justice, conspiracy charges for helping cover up an assault.
So this is all the charges, though, stemmed from the Burke Loeb scenario,
Absolutely, yes.
not from anything else that they did or anything else they were
I
involved
would have to
in.
look at that. There may be some other corruption charges, but I was really focusing on more what they were charged with regards to, their connection to
Well, I'm
James
saying the
Burke.
witness tampering,
Yes,
that was all
absolutely.
related to
Oh,
just
absolutely,
covering
yes.
up for Burke.
Yep, absolutely. So, and
Which is still fucking mind-blowing because they're
Yeah.
covering up his thing.
exactly.
So why are they doing more than him?
Because they were charged. They had
They had more charges?
No. They had their positions were more. They had more of a public trust position in that this guy Spoda, he's responsible for prosecuting all the crimes in Suffolk County. McPartland's basically his right-hand man. They're responsible for maintaining the public trust and prosecuting these crimes. And here they are covering
Covering it
up
up.
the crimes.
Yeah.
So I think that probably would have something to do with it when federal charges are brought. They might not be ultimately responsible. And there's an old saying, the cover-up is worse than the crime.
That's crazy.
And just a recent update, this was from Friday, August 25th. Federal Appeals Court upheld their convictions. So, yeah, that was
Still
recently
there.
in the news. Yeah, so they're still there. I'm sure they're going to do the full 5 years. But, I mean, 5 years is, like nothing when you think about, what took place. So.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I found interesting in Jimmy the King, and this really spoke to me, was the author talks about the broken wing theory, and that's something I'd like to get into. So it says James Burke would, and I'm quoting here, James Burke would not seek out subordinates just because they were good at their jobs or because they showed a strong loyalty. Instead, he would rather have a compromised guy work for him. Any day of the week, somebody who he liked the liars, he liked the loose cannons, he liked the drunks, the womanizers, the gamblers.
But you also think that
but-
maybe because he can hold something against them?
Exactly.
Right. You can maintain more
Exactly.
control over that. I won't say crooked, over that cop who has issues.
Yeah.
You know, you can maintain more control over that guy than the
Up and up
than
guy.
the Elliot Ness.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. So his whole strategy, and this was also Thomas Spoda's strategy as well. You probably learned it from Spoda, but his strategy was that he would give a perennial loser, okay, and I'm quoting, a second chance, elevate them higher, okay, than reason would dictate, so that they would be grateful and they would be limited in their options, okay, that they will never, and they would never betray him. Okay, and if they did decide to betray him, okay, their past will give him easy ammunition to undermine and destroy them. So,
It reminds me so much of
Yes.
like something that
say it.
yeah, no, it's like I work for the post office and that shit goes on all the time. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like talk bad about my superiors or whatever, but like there's people that are in charge that fucked up and they put them there to keep them away from where they fucked up because they give them a second chance, like, and a third and a fourth chance.
Well, that's also
You know?
that's also to some extent the corporate mentality.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's people who get promoted. It's called the Peter Principle. You get promoted to your level of incompetence. So you keep getting promoted up, partially, like you said, get them out of the mix,
Yeah.
maintain control, but you get promoted to your level of incompetence, and now I have complete control over you because you can't handle the job you've been promoted to, so I now got complete control over your
Absolutely,
future.
yeah.
He was very, sly in the people he chose to work under him, and it really was a mob mentality in a lot of ways.
Totally.
So,
Sounds it.
yeah. Before we go on, just if anybody wants to call in, the number is 516-465-3990. So feel free to call in with any questions for myself, Michael, Nick.
Come on, Jimmy
Yeah.
Cole.
But so how does this tie into Gilgo? A lot of people are asking that. While there's no direct link of him, being directly linked to the Gilgo Beach murders, and the death of any of, the sex workers that worked there, that worked and were found, their bodies were found along the Ocean Parkway. A lot of people think Burke is tied to this in some way, and he's always been the name that keeps popping up on the suspect list. Obviously, we know now that Rex Heuermann has been arrested as the prime suspect in these murders. He hasn't been proven guilty yet, but he is in jail awaiting sentencing and a trial and whatnot.
You are aware that the trial comes before
Yes,
sentencing,
yes.
right? He's
I
innocent
apologize.
until
That's
proven guilty. You are aware of
my
that,
faux
right?
pas.
Okay,
I
okay.
apologize.
Making
Awaiting
sure.
the trial and
making
possible
sure.
sentencing if, he doesn't plead guilty first. But it's important to note that that it was under, I guess, Burke's reign, okay, as chief of police when the bodies were found, when the investigation was going on. And he put a lot of, he really kind of held that investigation up. He put a lot of blockades there. He wouldn't allow the FBI to come in and do their investigation and help because it was a possible serial killer and because some of the victims had crossed state lines. And so the FBI wanted to assist local municipalities, Nassau County Police Department, Suffolk County Police Department. He really upheld that. He put blockades there so that the investigation couldn't be properly conducted.
It's only for 1-2 reasons.
Well, you know, so you have to say to yourself, well, why did he do that? What
Right.
was he hiding? You know, was he involved, or what was he hiding? My personal belief, I can't find anything that connects Burke to Gilgo, and I don't know if he's responsible. My gut feeling is he's not directly responsible for the murders. I think he knows something, but I think he wanted to keep the feds out because of his own nefarious behavior, because of his own criminal behavior and his criminal background and his history and what he had been doing and the way he had been policing his police force. Like, it's my police force, I'm going to run it the way I want. He didn't want any outside interaction. He wanted to control everything. And I think that's why he kind of
The
put up
king don't want
yes.
eyes on him.
Exactly. Yeah, because what are they going to find? Here they are investigating Gilgo Beach, and look who's running the show. You know, it's like
Mr.
yeah.
Strap-on.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, so that's where we're at right now with James Burke. So he's just, he's right now. His next court appearance is September 11th. So we'll see what happens then.
It's an interesting date that they would pick for him.
I know.
So I have a really important question that's been bothering me from the day I read the criminal complaint.
Okay.
Because in the criminal complaint, he says, in offering the act to the undercover, he says, "I like sucking dick." My question is, and I don't know if he gets into this at all, is this something he enjoyed doing before he went to prison, or was this a learned behavior afterwards?
Well, this book was published in last year in 2022 before he got arrested for the most recent his most recent crime. So,
But as far as his sexual proclivities, was the dildo for his own personal use, or was it,
that they don't really go into that in the book too much. I mean, he had deviant sexual behavior. Obviously he was, engaged in a relationship with a prostitute in the late 80s, early 90s, Larita Rittenbacher. So, and it does get into some other relationships that he had with other women. There was one relationship with a woman, and I can't remember her name, unfortunately, and they didn't use last names, but she was married to this guy, Doug, and she was a hairdresser, and apparently she started having an affair with Burke, and it's believed that he started a whole prostitution ring with this woman.
Wow.
So when you look at Burke's behavior, and it keeps going back to prostitution and drugs and sex, and then you look at Gilgo Beach, it's like, and he was, the chief of police at the time, and he was putting up roadblocks and not allowing that case to be investigated. You have to wonder what his culpability is in all of that.
He could have easily been at those supposed sex parties in Oak Beach.
Yeah, that's
I was just
another
gonna ask
rumor.
about that.
Yeah, I know that the rumor has been circulating around for years now that there were sex parties going on.
Yeah.
That people high up in Suffolk County, Nassau County government were attending these parties, politicians. Whether or not that's true, I do not know, and I'm not professing to say that that is true.
Right.
It has been unsubstantiated, but you ask anybody living on Long Island who's followed this case, and the whole sex party thing just keeps coming up. So,
What I feel weird about is they said it was a sting operation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that they had eyes on him, and they were just waiting for him to do something
Yes.
to bring him in.
I think
Do
they
you
had
think
eyes
it-
on him since he got out
Right?
of
Do you think it
jail.
was a sting operation for him, or just a sting operation at that location, where
It's
that
too
may
perfect.
be a place where things go on a regular basis?
I mean, it's too perfect. Him out of everyone being
From what I've
there.
read-
and,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm
From
just
what I've read from news reports, yes, you make a very strong point. Yes, there were definitely cops were hanging out there doing a sting operation. But I also agree with you in the sense that I think from the minute he got out of prison in 2019, they had eyes on him.
well,
I think they have to.
Yeah,
but what you
especially
take,
this new
Yeah,
administration.
sure.
But what you take on this scenario in Burke? I mean, even though he just got out, he owns a home.
Mm-hmm.
He lives alone. He could have just made a phone call and had someone come over there and done what he wanted to do in private.
Yes.
But yet, at 10 in the morning, I mean, we're not talking 10 at night, midnight,
know.
10 in the morning, when people are just, they're having breakfast or whatever, and But he's going to the park and he's looking for action at 10 in the morning in
Yeah.
a public place.
Yeah.
What's your from what you read and what you know of him? What's your take on that whole scenario that he couldn't just call and have someone come to his house and do it in the privacy of his own home and not?
Yeah.
My feeling is that James Burke has always. I just consider him a narcissist. I think that
Thinks
his
he's above the
whole
law.
yes, exactly. His whole mentality is I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and I don't care. And you know what? I'm untouchable. He had that megalomaniac attitude, like he just
But doesn't he know he's not untouchable? He just spent time in prison
We
thinking
know
he was
that because
untouchable.
we're normal. He's not normal. This
I,
man
I
is.
You know
take great
what?
offense. I
Like-
take great offense to that accusation.
Look at like we're talking about like Mob, and I know it's fantasy or whatever, but it's based on true. But look at Henry Hill when he got
Yeah.
out of prison. He went right back
Absolutely.
to selling dope.
Exactly, because they love the life.
Yeah. They
Henry
can't get
Hill
away
loved
from
the
it.
life. Yeah, that's a great point, Nick. I mean, I think that James Burke liked the excitement. I think he loved
But I think there's a
trying
difference.
to get away with it.
But I think there's a
Yeah.
difference.
Look at me, I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing, and I'm going to get away with
Right.
it. You know.
I mean, I'm not
So-
defending Burke, but I
No.
think there's a difference when you talk about Henry Hill. Going to jail was the price of your career. When you got out, you had more respect, and then you went back to doing what you were doing. It was all part of that life. That's not part of the life he was
Trying to live?
trying to live. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different mentality, even though it walks a
But you know
very
what?
similar line.
How could someone like that have pride in what he did? Because he
Oh,
didn't
we're
work
talking
for
about
it.
Burke, which
Yeah,
is-
yeah.
yeah.
He didn't work hard for it. It was
Yeah.
handed to him. So
Yeah.
he didn't give a
Yeah.
shit about the pride of the police or the pride of like the public looking at him. You know, like
Yeah.
none of that stuff.
I
He just
know.
rubbed it into faces,
There's-
saying I can get away with it because of who the fuck I am.
Because he's been getting away with
And
it
let me
since he's
just-
14 years old.
And let me
Right.
just say, like, I'm just scraping the surface. I'm giving you like the bullet points of James Burke, but there is so much in this book. There are so many tangled webs. When you look at the police force, and you look at who was in charge, and you look at the pyramid, the people he had working under him were so corrupt, and there were a lot of good cops that they forced out. That
Sucks.
I mean, there were a lot of good cops who tried to do the right thing, and they were blackballed because of it. They were,
They were like forced to retire or like
Oh,
step down, right?
yeah, like he would manipulate things, and he would do things to put them in a bad light.
Yep.
Of things that these good cops did not do
That's a
because
shame.
they snitched. It's a lot like the mob.
Was there ever a
Yes.
situation where a good cop decided to go outside of Suffolk and go to, say, the feds and say, hey, you need to look and see
Yes,
what's going
I think
on
there
here?
were some cops that did, and and
There's one that was
unfortunately,
like he does interviews. I forget his name. I listened to it on a podcast. It's the Unraveled podcast.
Oh yes, Trotta. I think
Yeah.
yes, Trotta,
Right.
Suffolk County executive. He's a good guy. I mean, even judges. Like, if a judge didn't rule in their favor, if the judges were not pro cop, oh man, they would screw them over. Catterson, James Catterson. They hated James Catterson. They had a whole laundry list of people that they were out for blood against. If you weren't with James Burke and you were against him,
They'd work their
and
way,
if you were
yeah.
against him, they made your life hell.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was just awful. Yeah.
Which is easy to do when when you're
Uh-huh.
the law.
And it really disheartens me, and I use that term, for lack of a better term. This is the county that I live in, and I hope people don't walk away from this episode saying I'm a cop hater, because I'm not.
No, me either.
I'm not against cops. I'm against corruption, and there was a lot of corruption that took place under his regime. I have to, give, kudos to Rodney Harrison and to Ray Tierney and to the new Suffolk County administration that's in place, because
have
they're doing such
friends
a
that are,
fantastic job. Yeah, I have friends on the police force. I have
Me
friends
too.
in Suffolk County, and let me tell you, I love them because they all work hard every
Yep.
day. They put their life on the line. But it's unfortunate that you have a few,
Rotten
more than a
eggs.
few rotten apples that were working with Burke, under his regime, and just, put a dark cloud over Suffolk County Police Department, for so many years. And, I mean, it gets into cases, it gets into the Marty Tankliff case, okay? It gets into other cases in this book that I haven't even touched upon, where it's just so blatantly obvious that the way that these cases were investigated and prosecuted, it's just,
Are you able to talk a little about what's in the book on the Marty Tankleff case?
I honestly, I'd have to take a look at it, but
Okay.
they said, I think, Marty Tankleff is a case that I'd have to go back and do my research on, but I know that the broad strokes of the case, but I think when he was arrested, he didn't have any blood on him, and they said that what he did was when he killed his parents, he stripped down naked and killed his parents and then took a shower. So there was no blood on his clothes and stuff like that. But if you look at Marty Tankleff's parents...
He's exonerated. And
he's
an attorney now,
exonerated.
right?
Yes, and the attorney that represented him, he actually works in the same law firm for the attorney that represented him. So he's a lawyer now.
Wow.
And you know what? For a long time, I thought he was guilty. And then I realized, doing some research, that this kid wasn't guilty. And his father, unfortunately, was a little bit of a shady character. He was involved with some shady people. And there were some people that owed his father a lot of money, and rather than pay his father the money, they wound up killing him.
Yeah.
So I can't give you names, like I said, because I'd have to write everything down. But it's not a case that, on the top of my head, that I'm familiar with all the key players in that investigation, and that case. But there was police corruption there. It's like the old regime, these old cops that investigated these cases, like they would become so centered on one person that they wanted to convict that they wouldn't look at any other evidence.
Yeah.
And they pigeonholed themselves sometimes, to get a clean, arrest. They had to keep a clean record, that there's no unsolved crimes. It's everything's all clean, and we've got the person who's responsible, and, that way our record looks good. But, it's a shame. There's a lot of cases that went on in Suffolk County where a lot of corruption took place, and
Maybe this is a step for them to kind of clear up their name. If they, with the Rex thing going on right now, and then maybe now with this, you never know. Like maybe they'll tie him to something or find out.
I don't know.
Earlier, you said you think they had eyes on him, and maybe he was targeted.
I
to be
think
picked
so.
up for this.
A lot
I
of
don't
people-
know. I
Do you
just think it's too perfect.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But do you think that then picking him up was a pretense for getting him in to maybe be able to talk to him outside of the public eye about other things, maybe relating to
this case,
to Rex or the other
absolutely.
bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I agree. I think that he knows a lot.
So
He knows a lot.
He knows definitely more than
I
he's
think
told.
he's had
Oh yeah.
interactions with some of the key players, not only in the Gilgo Beach investigation, but who knows if he has ties to Rex,
He could.
I mean, I don't know.
Who knows? You never know. Listen, like you said, there was like higher up. Let's just say this is just a scenario that I'm going over in my head. That there those sex parties that were going on, and there's higher ups in there and everything. And there's politicians and there's high cops or whatever. And then you got this Rex that's coming in here. He's like at the low end of the pole, the totem pole. They could easily been like, you know what? This could be our fall guy, and we'll throw all the shit onto him. So maybe he was covering up more bigger stuff. But that's a scenario that I'm coming up with. But it's not too far fetched.
It's not too far-fetched, but for me, I don't want to say something that will be taken as fact.
I might-
I want to
no.
stick to the facts.
I
I'm
might buy
only an
that
armchair
scenario.
detective.
I might buy that scenario more if it was under the old regime from 10 or 15 years ago that maybe they did that.
Well, it could have.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
that's
I
when
don't-
those crimes were. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about now.
Yeah.
No, now they, I feel like they're on the up and up, and they're trying to rebuild that respect and get that faith back in the public and everything. And by delivering something like this and solving a case like this because it was cold for so long, and then maybe even bringing light and new charges to Burke. You never know. Like,
We'll see. I
So,
mean,
and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe you do. Talking about Rex and Burke and the serial killer scenario, I remember that when around the same time he was arrested, they had found another body I think along the southern state.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with it. That was
Like a day before or
Yeah, it was the
something.
day
Yeah, yeah.
before, and that was related. That was a teenage boy, and that was related to.
Well, that could
I
be
want to say it
Burke.
was had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, man. Burke
Had
can
not,
do
I'm
anything.
telling you right now, that had nothing to do with it. They already solved that case.
Oh, they have. That's what I was
They
going to ask
already
you. They
solved
already
that
solved that
case.
case? Okay.
It was a boy who had some kind of bad relations with people at a party. I don't know if it was gang related. I believe it was gang related, but that had nothing to do with.
What about unidentified Asian man?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean,
What's that one?
That's one of the Gilgo
one of the Gilgo
bodies.
Beach victims.
They found
Yeah.
a man that was dressed as a woman.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you never know.
Oh,
Yeah,
that would
that-
piss me off.
Well, we talk about James Burke and we talk
I mean,
about his
Burke
most
probably would
recent
have been
behavior.
into it, but you never
Yeah,
know.
we look at his most recent
Right.
behavior at the park. But again, I want to stick to the facts. I
Right.
don't want to sit here and say
Embellish
James
and
Burke
stuff.
may have done this, he may have done that. Right now, I don't know
Because
that
then
he's
we'll be
involved with Gilgo
conspiracy
Beach.
theorists.
But I know that his name keeps popping up, and I do know that I agree with you that I think the cops had eyes on him for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he's a corrupt cop. He's out on parole. Okay, so you might want to just keep an eye on it anyway. I'm just saying. Okay.
But was he?
So-
He wasn't in violation of any probation or anything. He was done with.
I don't know if his parole was up. I don't know how long parole is. Do you know how long?
It can vary.
Yeah. So
It can vary. I mean, there are people in certain situations they could be on lifetime parole. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think he's that situation.
Yeah, I don't think I have from all the news briefs that I read about him and his most recent arrest. I didn't see anything published that he violated any kind of
Right.
parole.
'Cause I'm sure that would have been there.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
So then
but-
you think that the report is that the undercover that he solicited didn't know who he was
Yeah.
until Burke says,
Said, "I'm
"Do
James
you know
Burke."
who I am?
Right.
This is going to be really embarrassing for me." He didn't know who. Do you think the cop really didn't know who he was?
I don't, possibly not. And,
He don't
and
look
when he
like
said
himself.
that, and let me just get like you said, do you know who I am? It wasn't said in an arrogant way. It was like, oh God, do you know who I am? This is not going to bid well for me.
Right.
Well, regardless of who you
Please
are,
let me
it doesn't
suck your
look
dick
good
and
for
I'll
you
get off.
anyway. I mean,
When he
you
said
know.
it wasn't a "Do you know who I am?" It
Yeah,
was,
exactly.
"Oh God,
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
know who I am."
Do you know who I am? Please take down your
But
pants.
if you look at pictures of Burke, and it even surprised me. I look at
What he
pictures
looks
of him
like,
from
right?
2016
Yeah.
to today. I mean, he really aged. I guess
He look
Prison- he
honestly.
didn't-
I'm not trying to say anything
he
about
didn't do well in
appearance.
prison on many
He looks
levels.
kind of sickly in a
Yes,
little bit
yes.
of a way, you know.
I think he had the beard. I know I had one of those pictures. He has the beard, and he just looks like an old man. Yeah. So you know what?
I
bet you the cops probably didn't recognize him.
Could.
Yeah.
Very
I
easily.
would have no idea because I'm so far behind the race in knowing the stuff you guys know. Because the only reason I have any knowledge of any of this is because of Christine.
Do what she posts. Yeah.
Before this, before knowing Christine, I was what's the term you used for me? Ignorantly indifferent.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know and I don't care.
Do not know. Do not care.
So I'm just learning as we
Yes.
go.
And for me, obviously, it all comes back to my true crime obsession. So I just, my obsession with true crime, especially on Long Island. So I think that pretty much wraps it up, unless there's anything you want to add.
No, I'm good. I think I got all my
Michael?
Burkeisms out.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything at the moment. I'm sure it'll come to me while I'm driving home.
Yeah.
Oh, I should have said that. But no.
I do want to thank everyone, though, for listening. And I do apologize about the colorful behavior, but some of it was unavoidable, as you know, because of the subject matter. But
He deserved it.
but
Sorry to mess up the joint.
it's
I
all
just now have
good.
this vision in my head of Loeb getting beat within an inches of his life with double-fisted dildos by Burke.
Oh, my Lord.
Dildos.
Oh, God. Please.
You gotta, you know what though? You gotta give it up to him. The kid was a strung out, drug addict at the point, but he didn't take any shit, and he was just like, "You pedophile, pee-pee toucher," like he stood up for himself. He got the shit knocked out of him, but
And he is making, I actually am friends with him on Facebook. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know that he is making strides in trying to change his life around
Well,
and really trying
he
to.
did get a nice award from the county for getting beat up by
did.
Burke.
But
Yeah.
he cleaned up, and
Good for
I
him.
believe that he also started his own podcast. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of his podcast, but I know that he is trying to do the straight and narrow.
Yeah, no, that's
and
good. Good for him.
yes, yeah. So,
And you
kudos
know what?
to
I'm an
Christopher
advocate for
Yes.
It is-
Yeah.
staying sober and staying clean like that.
Yes.
So
Yes,
congratulations
absolutely.
to Loeb doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It is a very, very tough thing to do.
Sure.
When you get hooked on that stuff to clean up.
Yep.
It is very tough. So I give a lot of kudos to anybody who's able to put that behind them.
Yes, absolutely. So on that note, I'm going to end and say thank you all for your support and for watching and for listening. This is my True Crime Obsession checking out, and I hope to check back in with you guys sometime in the near future. Take care, guys. Have a great night.